Good morning. My name is Mystery and I'm 33 years old and I live in a van. I'm here at the beach and I'm going to clean up my mess and do a little story time about how I basically got started living van life and a little bit about my background. So I've been living this lifestyle for almost 4 years. I think it was about 3 years in May, and I've been majority full-time the first 2.5 years or so, and then more recently I got together with my current partner, and sometimes I spend time at her place. She lives in an apartment, and I was living with her for like a little bit, and now I can basically travel on my own, but also have the benefit of a place to stay, which is really, really nice. And I guess I'll just tell the story about how, I started van life where, let's see. Basically, there's free Wi-Fi here. That's really nice. I'm currently at Crystal Cove, which is one of my favorite beaches here in Southern California. It's gorgeous. You need a little pass to get in here, but it's definitely well worth it. Basically, I got started doing van life in 2021 after the pandemic, and I have a really interesting pandemic story that is relevant, I promise. So I've always been a bit of a minimalist. My dad's in the military, and that's kind of his thing too. Like, it's all about being as efficient as possible, like not really holding on to material things and trying to like simplify your space. I don't think I'm as much of a minimalist as some people are, but to each their own. I like to have a little bit of balance, but I don't really accumulate a lot of things. But I am an artist, and so I need things to do my art. I'm a musician, so I have a lot of like instruments and music related equipment that I collect, and that's actually, like, I used to be a record collector and I worked at a record store for a little while, and that was one of the hardest things to kind of like part ways with and like release the need to hold on to those things. But I actually found like having collections of things really ties you down to a certain identity and a certain way of interacting and consuming that thing that you collect. So I found that I was listening to the same records over and over again, and I just wanted to get out of this rut of listening to only some specific forms of music, and that's why I kind of let go of my record collection. And I'm also a musician, so I don't really I'm college educated, but I've had to cobble together part-time work historically in order to maintain my dreams of pursuing music and performing. So that's been something I've navigated, and it comes with a lot of stuff that you need for it. But I try to overall not be too attached to the material things in life. And during the pandemic, so I'm ranting. This is my storytelling style. But yeah, when I was in the pandemic, I basically was traveling with a really close friend of mine named Indra, and we were traveling throughout Southeast Asia, and basically we're gonna go on a little trip, a little like soul searching, like going back to our homes. I had visited the Philippines, where my mom is from, like in 2016, and that was really, really meaningful for me, and I was really excited to invite my friend along for the journey and for them to also show me around the places that they're from, Surabaya and Indonesia. So that was really exciting, and we had a really wonderful trip. It was January of 2020. And the trip was supposed to last until March of 2020. And when I was traveling, I'm gonna like put in some footage here. I try to document some of it, and maybe I'll make a compilation of like back footage or archival footage, because it was kind of low-key traumatic and I wasn't really ready to share everything that happened. But basically a 2-month backpacking trip where I was living I have the backpack right here. It's this 20-liter REI backpack. Yeah. Like, it's a 20-liter REI backpack that I had all of my earthly belongings in. And we ended up having to be on the trip. I think that I remember seeing the news, like, in the beginning of the trip, and seeing like word of COVID starting to break out, or like little murmurs of this virus, but it didn't seem very serious. And then obviously it escalated really quickly while we were traveling. And in March, when we were slated to go back, I had just reunited with my brother, who's Thai, and we were staying with him in a village called Prankratai, which is kind of like it's a little bit off the beaten path. And like, mind you, I don't speak Thai. I'm not Thai. I'm related to him on my dad's side, and he's half white. So it's like I was learning Thai on Duolingo like as I was traveling, and basically like navigating the world on vibes. And somehow, like, you know, thanks to like this higher power, like everything worked out. Like, I was able to find him and contact him, which I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do. And then as the airport started shutting down, and it became really clear to me that my return ticket was not going to like be, I had a return flight with I think it was, I can't remember which airline, but basically it was flying out of the Manila airport, and it was becoming clear that that airport is going to get shut down for quite a while. So I had to make a quick decision. That flight kept getting canceled out of there. I didn't want to be stuck in the Philippines. My family there is really big, and I just didn't want to be stuck there. I decided to go to Thailand and spend that time with my brother, because during this time, I just had this feeling that it was going to take a long time before things returned to normal. And I wanted to spend time with him and his family. So I ended up being in Thailand for an extra 6 months, living out of my backpack and what money I had saved up. And we got a place with them in their village. And yeah, I basically lived a really simple life. I started a garden. I started farming, like trying to farm to like keep myself occupied mentally in a country where I hardly spoke the language. I immersed myself in speaking Thai, which was really cool and a really amazing experience. And I felt really grateful to have had that experience. I was at the time, I was living in New York with an ex-partner that we ended up parting ways during the pandemic, unfortunately. And yeah, it was really difficult to explain to her, like, yeah, I couldn't really come home. Like, I was not in a position where I could just like fly home. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And it was it was really scary, but it also showed me that you can do, like, scary things can happen, and it's not really like the end of the world. It's kind of like it's part of this larger story of our life. And sometimes we're given these like really intense scenarios to overcome. So I was like going through my Saturn return, if anyone's like into astrology. So that's kind of like a trial by fire, and it's supposed to kind of initiate you into adulthood from like being a kid and being like, very, very self-oriented, very like almost egotistical. And I think like when you're young, being egotistical is developmentally appropriate, right? Like as a child, it's appropriate to be kind of selfish, self-centered, but then you kind of go through these trial by fires in life, and I feel like it's meant to kind of like it's like a trial run to get you ready for the next level in your life, where you're able to take on more responsibility and more of an adult role. And that this moment really felt like one of those. It really showed me like, okay, like where I was being really kind of immature and like first world problems, and it really showed me like the world is so much bigger than the West, which I think is really, it's actually like a really difficult thing for people that grew up in like American culture, because American culture is like it's very young, and it's very selfish. Like it's very underdeveloped. Like it's pretty young. Like like the United States as an empire is relatively young, and as such the collective conscious of people that grew up in America is, I think, pretty young. There's a sense of like cult of innocence within the United States, as to like our relationship to other parts of the world. And I think like spending extended time in Southeast Asia, not as a tourist, but as like someone with family there, you realize there's this huge world of people that like live completely differently than you do here. And a lot of times they're having to survive a pretty, unfair system that was kind of imposed by this, like, I don't know, this kind of, you don't realize how like corporate and self-centered so many people are in the United States until you're like in, you're in Vietnam, and you're seeing like all the people selling the stuff from the REI factory, like people doing what they have to do in order to survive. And to witness poverty is a very humbling, and it's kind of an ego death. You realize like, oh, this really like you realize like the connection between like this global poverty and the excess within the United States. So that was a really formative experience for me, and I guess that it's important to articulate that in the context of living van life, which also turns into this weird like, and I don't know, I'm one of those people that is not necessarily interested in living in a luxury van. And I think that's why I stayed off of YouTube for a little while, and I just kind of wanted to have my own experience with van life. And I think that, like there's a sense of discipline that comes with living really simply, that comes with like, and I think that of course it can be taken to extremes. I'm very privileged to be in this position. I get access to my little like laptop that I can do my work on, and I have the ability to talk to you on a really expensive phone and talk about things that I learned because I had access to education, and this all made me think that, like, there's just more to life, than what we had been told. Like, there's more to living life than the gratification of accomplishment. And I had considered someone to be really driven and very how you say, like, accomplishment oriented, or like high achieving. That was like really drilled into me. I think coming from an immigrant family and being like Asian, being kind of like the oldest sister, being good at math and STEM, like, it really ingrained this like achievement orientation within me. But I think that after those experiences, I realized there's just so much more to life than achievement. Like, life is so much about the inner experience. Like, yeah, and I guess that's something that I've been wanting to share more on social media, because I see so much potential in especially long form content. Like, I don't know, I've been able to have so much insight into like the human experience and the human mind. Like, the more that people can allow themselves to really share on a deep level, that resist this temptation to play into the attention economy. Like, and that's why I guess I'm gonna put this out here a little bit unedited, because there's something to that. There's something to being able to, like, really be present with like the long form of a human experience. And yeah, I was really drawn to van life and to alternative living. I had studied like I was like diving into this idea of like permaculture and living in harmony with the land, because when I was in the Philippines, the book that I was reading was called The One Straw Revolution. And my family, just for some background, a lot of my family in the Philippines, they're farmers. And they're really getting into the organic farming thing, and I really love that. Like, I really have always like been drawn to like environmental protection. I don't know, like, ever since I was a kid, I was like drawn to vegetarianism when I was like 12, and had a really strong feeling of like, we need to protect this earth that we live in. And it's a very innocent and beautiful thing, and I think that that's something that should be nourished in children. And so, like, I've been trying to also nourish that within myself. Like, okay, like, I genuinely want to like create these ways of living with the earth. And then when I was traveling, I realized like we have been doing that. We have been in harmony with the earth for so long. And that was a revelation that I had when I was studying. I went to the Evergreen State College, and for a year I studied eco building and design, and my final paper was about indigenous architecture, and how there had been these ways of building that utilized natural materials that had been passed down from generation to generation. And that's present in the Philippines as well. There's this thing called the Bahay Kubo, and that's what inspired this van. This whole van is inspired by the Bahay Kubo. And my uncle like lived in this hut, and he was farming, and it's like a thatched hut. It has like a thatched roof and no sides. And it was just a hammock, and it was so simple. He just lived so simply off the land, and there was a sense of peace. There was a sense of dignity in that, in what he was doing. Like, there's so much beauty and dignity in the way that people have been housing and living for so long. And after I was in that class, like, I realized, like, we know how to shelter ourselves. We've known how to live in communities and villages. It's really society and the government and these different corporate interests that truly, like, force us out of these villages and out of these alternative ways of living. That's funny because it's actually the original way of living. If anything, it's really unnatural for us to be living in these mass-produced, drywall-filled houses that are made from, like, lumber that's treated. Like, during that building project, we were trying to build tiny houses for this homeless community that we were volunteering with, or a houseless community, I apologize. And the only thing that prevented us, like, we had so much support from the community. Like, I went and did fundraising at the farmers market. We got donation of materials and building supplies, trailers, so that we could, get around these different ordinances around building. But the truth is that a lot of the city just didn't really want that. Like, they didn't want to have, they didn't want like their houseless community to be housed, because they didn't want it to affect their neighborhoods, their businesses, etc., etc. But with that, there was a lot of judgment and a lot of, this is a very, very vetted community, and they have a long waiting list of people to get into it. And they're, in a lot of ways, like, they're turning down some of the people that would be causing these, like, bigger issues around vagrancy, as far as, like, creating mess or creating disruption or, like, exposing people to danger. Like, this was a community of people that were vetted, that had background checks, so I think that living in this way, you realize, like, okay, like, what if everything is just like if everything is just determined by how much money you have to contribute, then how small does that make your community? How small does that make your village? And is that really the way that we're supposed to be living? Like, I don't know. I felt like there's so much more, like, living in the Philippines and in Thailand, like, there's a sense of connection, there's a sense of vibrancy, because people really do rely on each other. And in a way, like, the excess in the West really allows us to really live in that disconnect, to not rely on each other, to not reach out for help when we need it, because you can just pay for help. And it's kind of created a culture where that's not really expected or wanted, where people are seen as an inconvenience because they might not have access, and where people that are in genuine need just get kind of shuttled along an indifferent system. You know what I'm saying? Like, we see it in our healthcare system, we see it in our education, where people are, like, showing high rates of illiteracy. And we see it, like, in our culture, where people are, like, increasingly disconnected to one another. And so much of, like, what I used to enjoy as culture now is, like, pay to play. And that's kind of sad, because what do we lose, like, in terms of ourselves, and, like, how we see ourselves, how we view our lives? Because then we start to devalue ourselves and our own spirit and our own lives. So I don't know, I'm maybe just ranting at this point, but these are some of the things that were going through my head when I started van life. And originally I was living the lifestyle I was living before I lived in a van was really different. So basically I worked as a barback manager at a really, really busy and kind of infamous nightclub called Mood Ring. It's like a little bar in Brooklyn. And yeah, it was a very manual labor job, but I really liked certain aspects of it. I loved the music. I loved being able to listen to all these different DJs from around the world, and I really love electronic music. I still do to this day, and I'm going to, maybe get back into sharing it one day. But I really just love listening to it and dancing. And working as a barback gave me such a sense of like excitement and stimulation. But it was also like a really fast-paced lifestyle. A lot of partying and really unhealthy. Oh my gosh, look at the ocean. This level of peace was just not present in my lifestyle. And I was working against my circadian rhythm. So I was working nighttime. I would go to work at 8. I would get off of work at 4:30. If there was an after event going on really late, sometimes we would go to that and just like rage for a couple hours and then go home and pass out. And that was like my life for like almost 2 years. And it really took a toll. It really took a toll on everything. Like my mental health, my my body, especially. That was a big one. Like my physicality, my vitality. I was worn out. And I actually really loved, the whole, I kind of liked the lifestyle for a little while. It was like kind of glamorous, but it just, you just see so much excessive, unhinged, chaotic, and just, what's the word for it? Ostentatious behavior. It's kind of like ridiculous. Like, it's like, I don't want to call it like the gates of hell, but it's kind of like, it's all of the sin. Like, it's just like, it's so ostentatious, it's so excessive. And like day in and day out, you're just seeing like casualties of the 9 to 5. Like, they're straight casualties. Like, they would be coming in unable to like speak. Unable to speak. Like so wasted, and like sometimes you would see the same people every weekend, every night. And the people's behavior would become really chaotic, really messy, and in some ways it's kind of par the course for that type of lifestyle. Like, you can't just treat yourself and your body that way and then expect to be like, a really functional community member. Right? Like, and some people were really balanced. I'm not saying everyone has got a problem that goes to a nightclub. And I think that it's really healthy to have an outlet and to be able to be with others. But yeah, I just saw a lot of ridiculous behavior. And it made me want more. It made me want and crave a different lifestyle. And I think life is kind of funny that way. Like, everything eventually comes into balance. And so I got this van. I got it from this lady in Florida that had traveled in it for 2 years. And she had met her husband. And they wanted to start a family. And she sold this van. It was only a couple years old. You know, I had, after my trip to Asia, after living a lifestyle of nightlife service worker in New York, I had some money saved up because I'd been pretty good about like not falling too far into the lifestyle creep of my job, which is kind of funny because like a lot of times like people dress really nice and then they would be like, oh, why are you dressed like that? Why don't you dress nice like to come to work? And I'm like, to get like tequila spilled on my Jean Paul Gaultier top and to get throw up on it, like I'm okay, I'm good. But yeah, I didn't really spend too much of like what I earned on that like ostentatious lifestyle, which I have no judgment for. Honestly, like people looked good and they were living their lives. I'm happy for them. It just was not for me. And I was able to get this van, and yeah, and shout out to my ex for helping me find it. So it all worked out, and it ended up not really being like the lifestyle for her. I think that she needed a little more stability, which is totally fair. Like, this is certainly not the type of lifestyle that I would recommend for everyone. And hopefully, like, if I share more about like my proclivity toward yoga, so I like practice yoga and like some of the philosophy of it as well. So like just kind of this desire for spiritual, spiritual unity and mastery, like that for me takes priority over like collecting material accolades. And yeah, that's why I think that this lifestyle works out really well for me, and I'm excited to share this channel. And yeah, thanks for being here if you've made it this far, and please give me a like if you want more videos like this. I'm gonna make them anyways, but yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about van life. If you're thinking about it, I feel like this lifestyle is really customizable to what you're looking for. And also, there's so many people living outside of the society's expectation of what you should be doing with your life. Like for me, as a 33-year-old woman that doesn't have a family or children, I think that it's really awesome that we can share our stories. And I'm really proud of you if you're out there trying to make it in whatever way you can. And yeah, let me know. See you soon.